Good afternoon, everyone. This is Captain One for the Dark Star Strategist here. Once again, here to discuss some things. This video is going to be a little bit different. Now, I'm going to go over the fundamentals of ROE and what it is and how it applies to Dark Star alliances. But I also want to go a little bit more of an personal interpretation here. What I, as a player, have observed over time and how ROE has affected me and why I think it's important to apply it, even though there are many out there who do not. So, first of all, a simple discussion. What is ROE? Well, ROE, sometimes called ROE, it's a shorthand form of saying rules of engagement. This is something that anyone who's military adjacent is familiar with. It's something that applies in the real world, and it's something that we somewhat came up with in game as a collective community. So, rules of engagement here. This is something, it's got a history to it. A lot of admirals from former alliances, mostly different people now, but all together came up with how do we make this game more palatable? There's some PvP elements to it. That's kind of a given. Once you reach level 10, you can pretty much hit any ship you see in space. And level 15, your base also becomes subjected to potentially getting raided. So the only way to avoid that is to setting up a peace bubble for yourself. So sorry, Daboom, I don't see a very good opportunity here to join your armada here because I'm trying to do this video at the moment, but I think you'll get the support you need anyways. Hopefully that won't be too much of an issue for you while I do this video. But anyway, so rules of engagement. Like I said, it's been around for some time, and it's there to basically help players police yourselves, help you to it gives you a set of guidelines that determine whether or not you interact with other players respectfully. I know when people are relatively new to this game, you'll be trying to get all these G3 nodes. That's 3-star gas, 3-star or in 3-star meth. Your options may be quite limited. Those of you who don't have a big warp range, you'll probably be looking at places like Voss, and you'll be wondering, how do I get a node when I got all these people already sitting on them already, some of them with warships? How do I get my dailies done? How do I get these quests done? How do I get the materials I need to upgrade my ships and my base? Because you'll look at Voss and you'll see them all covered. You look at Praia, you'll take a look and you'll see them all covered. And then you'll go to Aruna, and you'll probably see the same thing a lot. These are, in this case, not so much. Maybe you'll find those openings and you go grab them. And you'll be doing the same thing in Romulan space. You'll be looking at places like Davidol and Nabok for ore. And you'll be looking at Bavaria. And similarly for Klingon space, you'll be looking at Franchik, and you'll be looking at McClin, and you'll be looking at those types of places as well. And I think Antonik, yes, Antonik. And you'll be looking for all the crystal that way. And you'll be running into the same thing. How do I get my dailies done? How do I get what I need to build my ships, my fleet? Because you don't have the warp ranges to get to some of these places. Later on, you'll be looking at places like Tau Ceti and Pajam and 80 and Noak and Thama and Silulux. Get a little further out, you'll be looking at the bigger places like Nicosa and some of the faction spaces that are out there, like Romy and other places. But you don't have the warp range right now. All you have is this ECS Fortunate that you've maybe max tiered out if you're lucky, and you can only reach those low level areas. So how do I get a mine? All the players are bigger than me. How can I go in and do what I need to do and progress to get to the point where I can do more stuff? You'll ask that question periodically, and ROE is a big part of that. Rules of engagement tells you, how do I take for myself a mine when I don't have when none are sitting there available. So if I was looking at a place like Voss, first thing I'd be looking at is, oops, excuse me, um, the different mines. Now this player here, NA7LE3, is sitting on what's known as a zero node. For zero node, the standard rules of engagement is you give a 2-minute node warning. So what would happen is you can select this person. In my case, I can't do it because they're too low, but if it was someone like this, I could reach out to them, chat, and send a little PM and then tell them that they have a zero node. And if they do not respond in 2 minutes, you are within the rules of engagement to take that node. And you can take it for yourself, and you are free to mine it. And they may disagree with it, but you have followed the rules of engagement that we have set out for you in this alliance. So therefore, we will cover you if that person becomes disagreeable with you, as long as you give that 2-minute warning and you wait the 2 minutes. Now, there's also warships. Mining with warships is always okay within rules of engagement. Plus, this person is also overprotected cargo. When you look at their rewards box and you see something other than just the little PvP chest, that means they are overprotected cargo, and that means that person is free to hit at any time. But also, warships mining are free to hit at any time. Warships in open space are free to hit any time. Now, does that mean you should hit every warship in space you see? No, that's A, expensive for you because some of the warships are as big or bigger than you, and B, because they're not always sitting on a mine. But if they're sitting on a mine, they are not getting their gas increased very fast. They are overprotected cargo. You're free to take it from that person. And our ROE in this case requires no notification whatsoever. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. Now, each alliance has its own set of allies. In the case of DSJGAE, we have DSJF, BXK, and BXK with a little apostrophe thing. We also have non-aggression pacts with Nova, and you'll typically see players that have little heart symbols attached to them. I don't see any here right now, or a little waving hand symbols that are purple. Those are typically people we'll give a little bit more consideration towards. If it's an ally on a zero node, we'll still give it a 2-minute warning. And what I typically do if I ever am put in this position is I will tell them, I will offer it back to them if they needed it to complete their dailies, but I'm going to take it from them to keep it in their family. Because what's going to happen is if you don't take it from them, someone else will, and they won't probably have any chance to get it back. So there's nothing saying you can't give a 2-minute warning to an ally and take it if the situation requires it. Again, if there's a node available for you, just grab the node that's open. But in the case where you're trying to grab one because there's none available to you, you go ahead and grab it. Now, obviously, best thing to do for anyone out there is to go a system that you're looking at and look for open nodes. Now, when you happen to be in factions, high-level faction space, you'll find more and more instances where there's no open node available to you. So you don't need to go out and bump someone because you can just send a ship out to it. But this requires a warp range 40 ship, so that may not be accessible to you right away. But for the most part, as long as you politely follow ROE, don't be a jerk in your PM chat. If someone has an issue with you, your commodores and your admirals in Darkstar will have your back. And when people like me have your back with a 2.5 million enterprise, trust me, people in the level 20 to 30 range, they will respect you when this shows up. I can almost guarantee it. If they don't, I will make my presence known in multiple locations until they begin to behave themselves. That's one thing I enjoy doing. I will pop peace bubbles all day long to see players learn to behave more responsibly and honorably in this game. Now, um, so 2 minutes on a zero node, 5 minutes for allies, and it's probably worthwhile to do for friends on overprotected cargo or OPC nodes, and everyone else you can just hit an OPC node. And if you don't have either of those situations, don't kill the ship. It's as simple as that. That's a good way to get someone irate with you. Um, you won't be able to keep the node because they'll probably just hit you back, and we won't have your back. You behaved irresponsibly. You violated our ROE. You're wearing our tag out and about, and you're acting in what most people's terms is like a jerk. So we're not going to have your back in those circumstances. We're going to make you defend yourself if you become truly irritable and truly inconsiderate to other players. We probably won't keep you in our presence. It's simple as that. Um, Now, a little bit more into the philosophy of ROE. We talked about what ROE is, and now let's talk a little bit about how it applies across the galaxy. One thing you'll notice here is not everyone applies ROE equally. So if I were to look at the biggest alliance in our server, which is under Iron Armada, and take a look at their alliance page, Behringer is their leader. They don't really say much in it right now, but one thing they do mention, and Discord's usually a little bit more explicit for every alliance, but Iron Armada, they choose not to operate under rules of engagement. They don't have any. That doesn't mean their individual players won't be considerate of you out and about. The only thing about it is they're not required to. Now, the advantage to that is if they hit you, nobody's going to criticize them because they're operating under the rules they work with. Now, on the flip side, though, one thing you'll run into a lot, I don't know if any are out here right now. Okay, Beast seems to be operating by himself, and I don't see any. But often, when you see Iron Armada out and about, you'll also see them with a warship stacked on top of their node. They have to basically provide escorts for all of their miners if they want to keep the mine. Some of them just don't mine. Maybe they spend the money and get the stuff they want and don't bother to do the mining. That's all their choice. But they have 3 wars going on right now. Being that they don't play under ROE rules, they have put themselves at odds with 3 very big alliances. Not as big, but Feds, Rule, and War at least are pretty consistently at war with Iron Armada, and that's because they don't play under rules of engagement. And they'll clear systems when mining events come up, and they've got a lot of power in their side they can do to back that up. But the problem is they're always watching their back, especially if they're one of the mid-level players in their alliance who aren't the big dogs with the 8 million Kelvins in their rosters. They're the people that really got to watch their back and make sure that they have a ship available to take it back just in case someone actively disagrees with their decision to take that mine. So in many cases, at least for me, Iron Armada has been very considerate to me. I mean, I have a pretty well-established reputation in this game just from having been around as long as I have. But in many cases, because I have a good rapport with them, they will still give me the 2 minute zero warning, and they will have a very good dialogue with me over mines. We're generally respectful to each other, and even though they're not required to observe the rules, they tend to be a little bit more considerate on average. Not always, and if they do decide to dirty hit me, I bring out my 2.5 million Emmy, and she's ready to take that thing back. And often they're not in a position to really argue the point, so they just leave it alone. But that situation, it just depends on what else is going on around you here. So that's a little bit about that. My philosophy is, and you'll hear differently. I mean, Rev Deuce, famous YouTuber relatively for this game, he thinks it's for the birds. He thinks row, no loot, don't shoot, for the most part. But if I take your mine and you aren't happy with me, bring back a bigger warship and take it back. And that's the way he operates, which is fine. And that's essentially what Iron Armada does. Me personally, though, I have not had a mining related incident in a very long time. People don't hit me for my nodes typically. I can find open ones well enough because I have fairly well developed faction ships that can get there. But even then, because I don't have this long history of relative animosity with these people, I haven't had to worry a lot about trying to hold a mine once I have it. It's pretty much plop the mine around there, let it go. I can check out, and more than likely, if I come back 2 hours and 41 minutes for that gas node, I can reset it and it'll still be there. The ship won't be in my base destroyed. Not an absolute guarantee, but I've had pretty good luck with it more recently. Now, it's also because I have cargo capacity. It can take in 40,000, so that's a little bit here to the side. But I understand the rules of engagement. I operate under them. I act considerate in my interactions with other players. If I'm not in a situation where I need to fight hard for it, um, maybe I give people a note out of sheer consideration here. I don't have to spend all day mining because I've built up miners to very high mining rates. My dailies are done often by the time I wake up for the morning. Um, it's how things get when you grow your fleet. You build yourself to a certain point. You don't have to be as aggressive. Your mining rates are much faster. You don't have to sit there plopped on a mine for hours on end to get to where you need to be, and you don't have to replace them a dozen times to get there. So, a lot of value to just develop, building a reputation for yourself as someone who is reasonable, as someone who, when they interact with people, um, they will generally be on the generous side. Um, that's my recommendation to people. You can't win everybody. I mean, we have our little KOS list of Waterdale and Yoda, which is gone by multiple different names. But so those people are kill on sight to us. But that's because they've shown a propensity to not be reasonable. They had a history with us that they decided to just go to war with us. And in one case, one person put a lot of money in to try to be bigger than us. Lasted great for a while. I mean, he was the big dog, and we were smaller, and we couldn't do a whole lot to stop him for quite a while. But he became such a he became rather grating to most of the rest of the galaxy too. So he hasn't really done anything dailies. I don't think he's picked up a loyalty badge probably in more than a year from doing his dailies. So he hasn't, other than what he spends real money for, he hasn't been able to grow his fleet. And because he's waited so long, people like me, people like Luxury Yacht, and maybe a couple of others, we've reached the point where we meet or exceed his capabilities, and we're also more experienced fighters. So when we meet him in open space, he runs like a tail between his legs because he's not very good at crewing his ships, and he's outgunned, quite frankly, and he did that to himself. Um, so people not observing rules of engagement and being relatively, well, quite frankly, a jerk out and about in this game, and not behaving like adults when you do interact with other players, that can have very detrimental consequences in the long run. Like the aforementioned Iron Armada, one thing every player should know about them is they are they are very warlike. They're very aggressive, but it's not personal. When they clear a system, they don't really avoid um, any ships that they're clearing. So all the miners they go out and kill, they'll get pretty much everybody. They won't hit other Iron Armada because they physically can't. But everyone else in the system is mostly open season. They actually do, some of us have a little bit of regard for us. They see us as favorable. They respect how we have a history of not being jerks in personal message every time they go out and do their thing. Some of it we take it in stride. I've lost plenty of minors to various player related incidents. After a while, you just kind of like, okay, can I replace it? Yes. Send the minor. Repair it, send. If I can't, okay. Is the person who got me still there? Okay, take it back. Did someone else get it? Okay, well, I lost it. Maybe it's time to find another one. And that's the easiest way to play things. If you don't let one of your miners blowing up get under your skin, game becomes a whole lot less more stressful. And I'll tell you, when people like our kill on sight folks decide to go out and killing, I like to just go out there and stop them dead in their tracks. That I enjoy that. Seeing bullies fall flat on their face, that's something that gives my heart great joy. So please, if you're having issues with that person, please let me know. I'm more than happy to try to get there and make that person run away like a yipping chihuahua, because that's the tendency they tend to do anyway. Bullies tend to be that way in real life, and bullies are that way in here too. So more than happy to indulge that when the situation requires it. Gives me a chance to up my PvP stats, which I generally don't because most players I try to treat on semi-reasonable terms. Now, some things that ROE does not address that I want to make sure that I get into a little bit. Base rating. Now, if someone's an ally or if they're at a friendly status, don't go base rating that person. That is a huge affront to them. Notify their commander if you think they might be vulnerable. So either their admiral or one of their commodores, and let them know this person's getting raided. That's a huge affront between our allies and our friends. But anyone other than that, shield or share is the bottom line. This applies to you. So if someone hits you that's not an ally or a friend of our alliance, it's no reason to declare World War III on that person. You need to bubble up and you need to uh, protect your base a little bit better next time, or you'll get drained again. But the same thing plays out in reverse. So if you see someone whose base is unshielded and you want to test them out, see if they're home, and run one of your warships into their base to see if they respond, you're more than welcome to do that. Most players these days don't take a lot of offense to a knock, and as long as you don't just try to bombardier them while they're still online and actively defending their base, because then you just portray yourself as obsessive. Um, they'll probably be okay with that. They won't hold it personally against you, and you shouldn't hold it personally against them if they knock on your base or even if they drain you when you didn't respond in time. If you do respond in time, it's simple. Hit repair, throw up your shield, done deal. You don't have anything to worry about the rest of the time. And they'll pretty much leave you alone. They're not there to harass you. They're just there to take your stuff. I know that sounds kind of bad, but in this game, that's the way the game is played. Um, so that is that. There's also a couple of other things that are out there. Franklin space. I've mentioned in my past videos, Franklins are not well equipped for self defense. They are not a PvP component. So you may have people out there who bring their warships into Franklin space and they fight each other. My advice, the cargo rewards you get from taking out a Franklin are really not all that valuable. So dedicating 3 or 4 of your warships just to um, try to do your event quests on a daily basis, you have to ask yourself, unless you're just looking for a fight, is it really worth all this time? Because now you can see these guys just burning themselves out, and I don't know if they're trying to get any dailies done, but clearly they're not getting a lot here because they're too busy taking each other out. And that's what you have to decide there. So my advice to you, I mean, my personal take on it is if you go after my Franklin with your big warship, you don't have the honor. You're not looking for a fair fight. So I'm going to bring you a fair fight. It's going to be more than fair. I'm going to probably outclass you by a pretty considerable margin. I'm going to send you home and I'm going to make sure that you're not a threat to other Franklins who are out there. And the same type of thing applies to Borg space. This is especially obnoxious to me because even to get here during the day, you need to spend that warp core to begin with, or that transwarp coil. So it takes 1 transwarp coil. You don't get an infinite amount. You only can have 8 maximum, and you only get 2 per day to get out here into Borg spaces. And you're just out here to kill these tactical probes. Now, Vidar is a little less vulnerable than a Franklin is to other warships, but it doesn't mean someone can't bring in here a 3 million Enterprise and dominate a maxed Vidar, which maxed out is around 1.1 million. It's still going to die very spectacularly to that type of threat. My advice, even though they have a big cargo capacity, people are just out here. They're not out here to fight other people. They're here to do what they need to do to build themselves up, and they're here to go home. And they only get 2 chances per day at it. My advice to people, don't be the obnoxious guy who goes out to these spaces just to kill other people, because you're going to develop a reputation for yourself. People are going to want to do the same thing to you every time they see you. And they will. They'll call in their big buddies. If you're too big for them, they'll bring in someone bigger. There's always a bigger fish, and they'll take you out. And they'll take you out at a time it's less convenient, and you can either repeat the cycle and just go to war with those individuals, or you can behave like a normal adult. You can mind your business, do what you need to do, and go home. I had someone try to take me out, didn't quite do it. I just occasionally take a look out here to see if they're out here, because I will kill on sight them now that they tried to do the same thing to me, because that's the way this game is played. It is a PvP game, and in my mind, bullies need to be stood up to, and that's what I tend to do. But there's still nothing wrong with it. Frank ganking, as I call it, or going after Vidars in Borg space, they are not against the rules of engagements. This is more of a personal philosophy. Rules of engagement says warships can be killed anywhere, if you remember correctly. So they're not in the wrong by doing so. But you're also not behaving under very fair terms either. So if you're remembered as the person who kills people out and about who are just out there questing, you will be remembered for that, and they will be sure to return the favor any chance they get. So that my advice is don't become that person, because the karma will find you eventually if you do that. Same thing is true in a lot of these systems. Depending on what's going on, they might park their warships next to the nodes too. Sometimes they'll put it on top of it. But some people will park. I don't see any out here today, but warships next to their miners. Those are open season as well. A lot of open notes today, by the way. Hopefully, you guys have got what you need or you're finding these because they're all over the place. But you will see, especially the more aggressive alliances, they will put warships right next to their miners, just trying to preserve it. Now, there's nothing saying you can't go and kill that warship that's sitting by the node. Now, do you have to? Unless you got a real big beef with the person, why would you? It costs you repairs, costs them more repairs, and it gets them a little bit irate. But some people choose to. Totally your call. How you behave in this game absolutely will reflect how the community responds to you when they see you. And I will tell you, life is much easier when you don't have to sit there paranoid, monitoring all the mines you run every second and just look at the numbers. Okay, my OPC army getting close. Sure, let's reset it, bring it back, grab it again. That's a much easier way to be. It doesn't require as much of your time. Um, and that's really all there is to it. Like I said, my philosophy is mostly of a live and let live. Follow the rules of engagement, and people will respect you. Um, don't be a doormat. If people do hit you, do feel free to retaliate, but don't feel like you need to tell them you wish their entire family died in a cancer or something like that, because that stuff's just rude. It makes no sense. It is just a game at the end of the day, and it doesn't serve any useful purpose, and it'll get you very quickly on bad terms with your own commodores and admirals. So my recommendation: behave yourself appropriately. Understand accidents happen. Sometimes incidents happen. Sometimes people will be jerks. If you do have those incidents and you're not in a position yourself to deal with it immediately, call on your friends. If they were clearly hitting you with what is known as dirty hit, where they don't hit you OPC and they don't hit you on a zero node, more than likely people will reach out and help you to rectify the situation, and they will be more than happy to put the bullies in their place. But that's really all there is to it. If you have questions, reach out in Discord. This is Captain Endo One for Dark Star Strategist. Live long and prosper. Signing out.